Tonight's big stories. President Bongbong Marcos says the Philippines is ready to assist Japan following the magnitude 7.6 earthquake that struck the East Asian country yesterday. We'll be speaking with DFW Officer in Charge Undersecretary Hans Leo Cacdad about this later on in the program.
The Supreme Court has approved procedural rules on petitions and applications concerning the anti-terror law. Do these provide enough safeguards? We'll be asking that question to Human Rights Lawyer Neri Colmenares.
Makati City is no longer extending healthcare subsidies to Embo Barangays. What does this mean for residents caught in that land dispute?
Welcome to the big story. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Dani Laurel.
And I'm Shawnee Yao.
We begin tonight's broadcast with the extent of the damage of the magnitude 7.6 earthquake that hit Japan's west coast on New Year's Day becoming clear. At least 48 individuals have lost their lives in Ishikawa Prefecture. Over in Wahema City, over 200 buildings were destroyed during the quake. Meanwhile, over at Kanazawa City and Nanao City, some roads remain impassable and several homes collapsed. This has made it harder for rescuers to reach and travel to the affected areas.
And while they have to recover from the initial quake, the Japan Meteorological Agency has already warned of further earthquakes, which could also be as strong as that initial tremor. Just last night, more than 150 aftershocks were recorded.
Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has since announced the deployment of thousands of soldiers, firefighters, police, and rescuers. Authorities have also started conducting aerial inspections of the most severely damaged and hard-to-reach areas. Meanwhile, residents, especially those living in coastal areas, have been urged to evacuate. President Bongbong Marcos has offered to provide assistance to Japan after the massive tremor. Marcos added that they are also, quote, in close collaboration with the Japanese government to secure the welfare of our kababayans residing in earthquake-hit areas.
Now, it's not just the quake that struck Japan. Here's another incident over in their country. A Japan Airlines jet was engulfed in flames at Tokyo's Haneda Airport earlier this afternoon. Live footage on Japanese public broadcaster NHK caught the aircraft bursting into flames as it slid along the tarmac. The Japan Coast Guard is currently probing the possibility of a collision between one of its aircraft and the passenger jet. All 379 passengers, thankfully, and crew members were safely evacuated. However, 5 out of the 6 crew members from the Coast Guard aircraft are reportedly missing, while one managed to escape. A representative from Japan Airlines stated that the plane had taken off from Chitose Airport in Hokkaido. All runways at Haneda Airport have since been closed off. With that, passenger boarding of Philippine Airlines flight PR424 Manila to Haneda has been put on hold until further advice.
Let's now get more updates on the country's efforts to help our kababayans in Japan. Joining us now via Zoom is DMW Officer in Charge, Undersecretary Hans Leo Cacdad. Good evening, Yusek. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Happy New Year din po. Let's clear the numbers first. Tama po ba that 35 Filipinos have been evacuated? We also have about 1,200 Filipinos living in these two affected prefectures, 469 in Ishikawa and 725 in Toyama, or have the numbers moved since?
Naka-mute po yata kayo, Yusek? Ay, parang hindi natin marinig
Parang
si
hindi
Yusek
natin marinig
ngayon,
si Yusek.
I guess we'll check
try to get him
back
back.
in on with him later after fixing the technical difficulties. But ito nga kahapon, no, January 1, Sean, welcome back by the way.
I know, welcome back. Lahat na lang tumama nung bakasyon,
Oo.
no? Lahat ng sakit, ubo, nawala ng boses, itong malaking earthquake. And nagulat ako na ang dami nga pala nating kababayan na, residing in that area.
Yeah.
A lot of people working, a lot of Pinoys working there. Also, a lot of Filipinos on vacation in Japan. And we had OWA's
Yesterday.
Arnel Ignacio yesterday to talk about their assistance. Binigyan nagbigay tayo ng hotline, pero mamaya nga kukuha tayo ng updates kung ano nangyayari sa
Okay,
ating mga
nandyan na raw
kababayan sa
yata
Japan.
si Yusek Okay, wala pa.
Well,
wala pa.
yesterday, he said that good thing, no casualties, at least from the Filipino community so far given. He also gave a hotline just in case, meron bang ano. But like we reported, no, there's another issue na naman, which is the fire in the airplane that was just happening just less than an hour ago. So parang
Unfortunately
2024
though, no,
in
kahit
Japan.
na walang natamaang Pinoy, ang tumataas yung death toll as of now. We are around 48 as of the last reporting. And I don't know kung tataas pa yung numero doon kasi yung mga rescuers hindi pa makapenetrate doon sa hardest hit areas. I saw on the internet, I'm sure everyone has seen on social media, bitak-bitak na yung mga kalye papasok and they only rely on helicopters to do aerial
Well,
inspections.
apart from the aftershocks na binabantayan nila dyan, yung mga tsunami warnings that come after the earthquakes. Now, before we go back to Yusek Hansley Cacdad, Danny.
Let's, of course, get some updates. We have with us on the ground one of our kababayans over in Japan, live via Zoom, John Allen Raymond Tejada, a resident of Toyama City. Good evening, Sir John, and thank you for making
Hi.
time po for this interview.
Good evening po.
Kamusta naman kayo dyan? Nakakatakot ba yung nangyari? And is everything okay after the 7.6 quake? We are seeing, of course, just videos here remotely, no? But tell us how the feeling is po na nandyan po kayo on the ground.
Yun po, nakakatakot yung nangyari sa amin kahapon kasi first time kong maka-encounter ng ganito kalakas na lindol dito sa Japan. Halos 5 years na ako dito, ngayon ko palang na-encounter yung ganyang kalakas na lindol. Pero stable na po ang lagay namin dito ngayon, ma'am.
Oo nga mukhang may internet ka. Ang ganda ng reception. Kitang-kita ka namin, John. Pero can you tell us kung anong na-experience mo nung tumama yung lindol? Sobrang lakas ba talaga yung pagyanig? At balita kasi namin, nasa Japan, they don't report magnitudes. They report yung shaking on the ground on a scale of 1 to 7. And balita namin na 7 nga yung binalita sa inyo. How did you get the alerts? May mga tumutunog bang mga sirens? How was the whole experience?
Yes po, yung mga cellphone namin nag-alert naman sila. Kaya medyo nakapag-con kami na may parating na lindol. Then yun nga po, hindi na ako masyadong nakagalaw kasi nauuga yung kinalalagyan namin at nahihilo ako. Kaya hindi na ako nakatakbo. Inantay ko na lang na maging kumalma yung lindol.
Okay, John, sa ngayon, kamusta naman? Nakakaramdam ka pa rin ba ng aftershocks? And
Madami pa po. Kanina
marami
yung
pa rin.
last namin, parang 7 p.m. Meron pa rin siyang mga aftershock.
Safe po ba yung sitwasyon nyo ngayon? Or may takot pa rin ba kayo? Or meron na bang
Tatakot pa rin po.
evacuation? Talaga ba?
Dahil nga baka may kasunod pa, sana wala naman.
Alam natin, isa yung Toyama, pati yung Ishikawa sa mga may tsunami
Opo, yung Ishikawa po
warning.
yung center ng lindol. At medyo malapit lang din kami dito, Toyama City ako.
Kayo ba ay nasa mataas na lugar because yung binabantayan din, yung tsunami?
Yes po, nasa mataas na lugar kami, ma'am.
So hindi ka naman na-evacuate, John, at meron ka bang mga other Pinoy friends dyan na nakausap mo? Maybe nakakapag-text ba kayo, nagtawagan ba kayo to check maybe kung kamusta ang lagay ng isa't isa?
Yes po, marami po kami dito sa kinalalagyan kong mga Pilipino. Mga almost 50 po kami dito.
And everyone is accounted for naman?
Yes po, mabuti naman po lahat ng kalagayan, wala pong injured. Safe po kaming lahat.
Ano po yung instructions ng Japanese government ngayon? Klaro ba? Ano po yung sitwasyon ngayon and ano yung mga instructions para to stay safe? Ngayon sinabi niyo po na hindi medyo takot pa rin kayo.
May mga alert naman pong dumarating sa amin nagsisend sila ng sa email para sa safety alert dahil doon sa binabantayan na tsunami alert. Pero dito sa prefecture namin, parang hindi naman naabot yung tsunami alert, ma'am. Kasi nasa mataas na lugar kami.
John,
Bali sa Ishikawa prefecture lang talaga yung
Tsunami.
nakabantay ngayon.
John, klaruhin ko lang, so wala kang kilalang nasaktan ng lindol or casualty sa Pinoy community?
Wala naman po, ma'am. Lahat po safe.
Ayun.
Alright, John,
Pero ang casualty dito is nasa 6 po yata yung namatay sa Ishikawa.
Okay, kamusta naman yung state nung tinitirahan mo ngayon? Mukhang di ka tama ba ako in assuming that you did not need to evacuate sa isang school gymnasium which are being used as evacuation centers? Yung bahay mo ba ay stand-alone or nasa parang condo ka or apartment? And around you, no, bukas ba yung mga tindahan? May nabibilhan man kayo ng mga pagkain, tubig, etc.?
Yes po, bukas naman po yung mga family mart dito, convenience store. At itong tinitirahan namin, okay naman po kaya hindi na kami in-evacuate. Pero chinek naman po kami ng mga coordinator namin about sa kalagayan namin dito.
Yung mga roads ba or yung electricity or internet, meron bang naapektuhan dyan? Or parang
Dito
as
po
usual
sa
lang?
amin, ma'am, wala. All goods po lahat.
John, ano bang
Gumagana
ano?
po internet, tubig, at saka yung wifi, kuryente, meron po.
John, hindi namin natatanong ano bang trabaho mo dyan at nakakapasok ka pa rin ba?
Nakakuan po kami, ma'am, naka-holiday vacation.
Okay.
Dahil ba yan sa lindol o dahil sa bagong taon?
Hindi po, dahil sa long vacation dito sa Japan.
Anong work mo dyan?
Po,
Anong work niyo po dyan?
factory worker, ma'am.
Ayun, factory worker. So may advice na po ba kayo kung kailan kayo babalik?
Ang balik po ng pasok namin is 9 po.
Okay, hopefully wala nang mga lindol by then.
It's a good
Safe
thing.
na
It's a
yung
good
ano,
thing
no?
that
Sana nga
they
po.
are on break. The workers are on break. So they are in their individual homes, probably where they're safer also to come together and to protect themselves
And
from the
ano
quake.
na rin, no, habang nandito ka na rin dyan, matanong na rin namin, gaano kalayo yung pabrika, yung planta na pinagtatrabahuhan mo from your place of residence? And would you know kung ini-inspect na rin nila yung gusali, yung facilities, kung naapektuhan ba ng lindol?
Bali mga nasa 25 minutes po yung pinagtatrabahuan ko dito sa apartment na tinutuluyan ko, ma'am.
Curious din ako dyan, no? Yung feeling nyo ba na yung mga building po dyan, medyo earthquake-proof na sila? Yung parang hindi, meron ng mga
Kasi sa
structures.
Japan, uso yung earthquakes. Hindi naman
oo,
siya yung, kumbaga,
actually, sabi nga nila, parati
handa,
silang may
oo.
earthquakes, di ba? So, feeling mo ba parang handa
Maganda
naman
po yung mga buildings talaga nila dito. Hindi siya ganun, parang talaga siya. Naka-design siya sa earthquake.
Okay.
Talagang sumasabay lang siya sa earthquake. Kaya yung mga nadadamage, konti lang talaga.
Okay, good to know naman, no? So, again, stay safe. We will continue to watch out, no, for you and also our other kababayans. Maraming salamat for joining us. John Allen Raymond Tejada, of course, from Japan.
Thank you din po.
Okay, mukhang okay si John.
Kalma lang sila.
Yeah,
ano?
so far
Okay
we've
naman
been
yung mga
getting good
building nila.
reports yesterday from Sir Arnel Ignacio and then from John. Wala pa naman tayo nababalitaan na masamang nangyari sa ating mga kababayan. So that's good.
That's good. And as we know, of course, Japan, di ba, Pacific Ring of Fire, they're right smack there. Sanay na sanay sila sa earthquake. Although having said that, hindi talaga maganda. Alam mo yung na-trap ka sa gitna ng earthquake, parang hindi mo na alam yung gagawin
And
mo.
having said that, I wonder, just imagine 48 people have died from
So far.
even with
Regardless,
the earthquake-proof
yeah,
structures
exactly,
of Japan.
exactly.
So definitely this is
And no tsunami as of now, di ba? It hasn't hit yet. So,
Okay, kamustahin na nga natin, no, ang lagay ng ating mga kababayan sa Japan. We have now with us DMW Officer in Charge Undersecretary Hans Leo Cacdad. Yusek, good evening. Salamat for joining us tonight. Happy New Year. Can you hear us now?
Yes. Good evening po sa inyo lahat. Happy New Year po.
there you go.
All right. Kanina we were going through the numbers. Kung updated pa rin po ba tayo sa mga numero ng ating Filipinos. We were just talking about how nagulat kami na ang dami palang Pinoy doon sa earthquake hit area.
Yes, we're focusing now on at least 2 prefectures. No? Nabanggit nyo na rin dahil na-interview nyo si John Alan tiga Toyama. So that's one prefecture that we're looking out for. Pero yun nga, tama, yung epicenter na sa Noto region, Noto Peninsula is in Ishikawa Prefecture. Between the 2 prefectures, mas maraming OFW sa Toyama, 725. Sa Ishikawa, 469. There is another prefecture just right beside the 2 prefectures further north yung Nigito Prefecture, mas marami-raming OFWs doon, 938. And we know that between the three prefectures, may evacuation activity na nangyari nung nangyari yung earthquake kahapon. Meron tayong ilang mga employers na nagulat sa atin na na-evacuate yung mga workers nila to certain evacuation sites designated by Japanese disaster management authorities. And yes, we have been monitoring through the Filipino community leaders as well as the OFWs themselves and the employers. We have been contacting the employers and recruitment agencies here in the Philippines. And so far, and we hope it stays this way, nobody has been adversely affected, hurt, nor harmed by this incident, by the earthquake. And in the meantime, we have also offered, we announced our intention to distribute financial assistance for those who are adversely affected. Halimbawa, yung mga nasiraan ng bahay o di kaya nahinto yung operation ng kumpanya sa trabaho. Well, sabi naman ni John Alan, bakasyon ngayon, ano? So, walang forced cessation of operations ng employers. But if that happens, we stand ready to distribute financial assistance through our Migrant Workers Office in Osaka, which covers Ishikawa and Toyama.
Yusek, you opened the hotline immediately. Have you gotten any calls on the hotline Kamusta?
Yes, to be honest, we have not received too many calls. We opened the hotline as early as about an hour and a half from the time of the earthquake itself yesterday, January 1st. Also, we have an existing Japan desk that caters to all concerns about OFWs in Japan. So we easily put up that same Japan desk as our help desk. It's a 24/7 monitoring facility or unit within the Department of Migrant Workers. And we have Yusek P.Y. Kaunan and her team to lead this. And so we are in full force in terms of monitoring the situation on the ground. And yun nga, we expect to hand out some financial assistance to those who have been badly affected.
Yusek, can you give us an idea of whether this magnitude has happened in recent memory and how different this is from the, let's say, usual earthquakes that Japan is used to?
Well, the one that I could remember the most, and I'm sure in the minds as well of the Japanese people, would be the Sendai earthquake maybe about 12 years ago. If you will recall, the tsunami that hit the Fukushima power plant, nuclear plant, that devastated the northern part, northeastern, if I could recall, the northeastern coastline of Japan. But that was a more, should I say, a grave disaster. This one, with the numbers given to us of the fatalities, of course, one is too many in terms of fatalities, but the numbers are definitely lower in terms of those who have been badly or adversely affected.
Right. Yusek, we're glad you kind of have everything under control. Mukhang everything's planchado, may Japan desk kayo. Pero nabanggit nyo nga you're expecting to dole out some assistance to affected workers.
Yes.
Can you give us a number of how many Filipinos do you think will be needing assistance? I'm sure may estimate na kayo ngayon. If you could just share.
Yes, so that's around 1,194 OFWs as between Ishikawa and Toyama. As John Allen had said, sila yung talagang tinamaan. So we're expecting about the same number. So ang request ko kina John Allen, na-announce na rin namin yung mga contact numbers yung Migrant Workers Office natin sa Osaka, kumontak lang po doon. Meron silang email, yung mwo-osaka@dmw.gov.ph. Mag-email lang po doon at tutugunan natin ang inyong dinudulog.
Yusek, apart from the two prefectures that you mentioned, Ishikawa and Toyama, what other areas are you monitoring, and is assistance also available to them, to Filipinos there?
Yes, of course, the Nigito Prefecture, which I mentioned, which is further up north, headed na yan to Hokkaido. up north sa Japan, and any other prefectures, no, that are near. Kasi 'di ba ang tsunami warnings and advisories all throughout the western coastline. So posibleng may adversely affected along that entire western coastline area from Nagasaki down south up to Hokkaido up north. So posibleng sila ay din adversely affected. However, yun nga, kung tutukuyin natin ang expected natin na magsasabing sila ang pinaka-badly affected, then meron na tayong expectation at least na dito sa Ishikawa at sa Toyama ay meron
Okay, mukhang naputol na naman tayo, no? Kay Yusek. Anyway, thank you so much to Yusek and DNW Officer in Charge Hans Cacdad for joining us tonight.
Now, after the break, the Supreme Court has released a set of procedural rules that will apply to all petitions and applications related to the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 and other associated laws. We'll discuss that further with one of the petitioners against the law, Attorney Neri Colmenares, when the big story returns. Stay with us.
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. The Supreme Court has approved the procedural rules on petitions and applications related to the anti-terror law. Under these rules, law enforcers are required to secure a written surveillance order from the Court of Appeals before they can wiretap conversations and conduct other means of recording private communications. However, the military and police may still arrest or detain persons suspected of committing acts defined under the Anti-Terror Act, even without a judicial warrant of arrest. But the detention period should not exceed 12 to 36 hours as prescribed under the revised penal code, or unless the Anti-Terrorism Council or the designated regional trial court authorizes otherwise. These guidelines also apply to individuals or groups seeking to obtain judicial relief from their designation as terrorists by the ATC and the issuance of any freeze order by the Anti-Money Laundering Council as a result of such a designation. The procedural rules on the Anti-Terrorism Act will take effect on January 15.
And here to share with us his thoughts on the procedural rules on the ATA released by the Supreme Court, we have with us on the show tonight human rights lawyer Neri Colmenares. He is the leading lawyer for the petition of a review of the law. Good evening, attorney.
Hi, good evening, Gretchen, Danny, Sean, and sa lahat po ng viewers ninyo.
Attorney Neri, concerns on the Anti-Terror Act run along the lines of this being weaponized or used politically against opposition. Do you think the procedural rules now clarify the definition of terrorism and terrorist acts?
Well, mainly it didn't because it has to abide by the law, and the law is very, very, should we say, horrible. The two problems here, Gretchen, is first the definition of terrorism is overbroad under the law, and that's what the even the procedure will define it. Is any person who commits an act intended to cause severe interference with critical infrastructure. So basically, you are being punished for what they are perceived to be your intention. And secondly, what is severe interference? What is critical infrastructure? Pag nag-rally ka ba and you cause traffic, is that severe interference? Or if you hold strikes or on very important government offices, is that so all these things depends on whether or not the police thinks you intend to commit quote unquote terrorist act. You're being punished for your intention.
Okay, attorney.
Secondly, the
Yes,
power of
go
the
ahead.
Anti-Terror Council is so huge, so big, and so large that the designation, for example, it shouldn't have been allowed to exist because designation is administrative, meaning it's the Anti-Terror Council, who is the judge, jury, and executioner here, who will designate you as terrorists. And the moment they designate you, it has already an impact. You can, in fact, be arrested, or in fact, your assets frozen, or your bank accounts closed. So basically, that's the problem. And in designation, for example, well, if they designate you, the burden is on you to file a petition with the with the Court of Appeals to question your designation. So why did the court consider this constitutional? In the old law kasi, the military or the police will have to file a petition in court to designate you as a terrorist. Now, they don't even need to do that. Whereas in court, they need to present evidence. The burden is on them. Oh, yan siya, terrorist siya, this is the evidence. Dito, they designate you, and if you want to question it, you yourself has the burden to file a petition in court. So basically, that's the problem here because the law is in itself horrible. Therefore, the IRR cannot go beyond the law and merely mimics what the law says, and cannot go beyond that.
Right, attorney. As we know, this law has gone through so much. It already The SC has already ruled that two provisions are unconstitutional. There have been public consultations that were done, according to Chief Justice Gesmundo. Are you saying, attorney, na kulang pa ang pagre-refine dito sa batas na ito? And having said that, ano pa ba yung pwede nating gawin? Kasi nag-rule na with finality yung SC. Do we still have any moves left?
Yes. Well, yes. For example, designation. I mentioned to you the burden is on the part of the person being designated rather than on the part of the Anti-Terror Council. The second is the procedure allocated 20 for you to file your opposition. Can you imagine it, Gretchen, Sean, and Danny? You're an ordinary person. You don't have a lawyer. You don't have access with Anti-Terror Council documents. Why did they designate you? How can you file in 20 days? What if you filed on the 21st day? Is your petition no longer allowed? Dapat, ang rules of procedure is this. Anybody designated can question it anytime. Whether you want to question it in 5 days or 30 days, there should be no limit. Kasi people, activists, ordinary, opposition people, wala namang access yan sa lawyer kaagad-agad na in 20 days you can file your opposition. So, things like that. Now, with regards to the second question, can we do something about it? Of course, as I've always said, tatlo lang naman ang laban dyan, sa korte, sa kongreso, sa kalsada, meaning kalsada is to protest. Well, sa korte, of course, we can file a petition later on. Pag may actual case na, in fact, there had been cases already done na designated yung ilang innocent people, indigenous people, for example, like Wendell Bulingit. So maybe that will be a cause for the Supreme Court to review its previous decision because no decisions naman are cast in stone. They can always be abandoned or reversed by the Supreme Court. The second is in Congress, if the House and the Senate can, of course, pass a bill that will repeal at least the onerous provisions, yung mga dangerous provisions like administrative designation. I-repeal yon. If you want to designate a person, you go to court. You place your evidence there, and it's your burden to prove it rather than the accused to prove his or her innocence. So it can be done too. And of course, human rights lawyers and advocates can continue protesting, hoping that the government will listen to their plea because this law can really be used against anybody that the government dislikes. If I don't know this administration, but it doesn't matter. If it's a law, the next administration, what if another someone similar to President Duterte wins in the next election? Then all of us will have a big problem. So I guess this is that there should be, while we are concerned with terrorism and terrorism must be condemned and so on, opposed, we do not allow naman government to have such power like the Anti-Terror Council to
Attorney,
designate red tag a whole lot of people.
Attorney, but just the fact that this exists, no, does that signal that the judicial process is perhaps too slow in being able to, let's say, target the terrorists? That's why there's a broadening. That's why there's a need for this. Is there a rationale for that to begin with? And then there is, of course, safeguards necessary.
Well, the moment we begin along that road, that's a difficult part because it's also too slow against rape cases. It's also too slow against murder. So we bypass all the judicial processes. What we need is not an anti-terror law. Then what we need is a reform in the judiciary to make cases work. For example, the fact that during the drug war, thousands have been killed, at least 6,000 as far as the police is concerned, 20,000 as far as the victims are concerned. Well, until now, how many cases are there? So we need to reform the judicial system rather than create a law that, if a police kills somebody, then that police should be killed, or, you have an anti-terror law on the reverse. So
Attorney,
that's my opinion there.
Attorney, I want to get your opinion on this. The time that this was used on a high-profile case was the one with former Congressman Arnie Teves. Dinesignate po siya na terrorist, finreeze po yung kanyang assets. What are your thoughts on that and using this law in his specific case?
Yes. Well, actually, we were surprised because when they were discussing it before the Supreme Court, they were discussing the Bin Ladens and the Abu Sayyaf and the Maute and so on. And then here comes, why couldn't they charge him with murder and, a whole lot of other crimes under the revised penal code? So that's already a sign that they have a very vague interpretation of what terrorism is. Because everybody thought terrorists are Abu Sayyaf and so on, not congressmen. There are congressmen who are charged with murder or other illegal acts, but you don't use that against them. I'm not saying that they should not be charged. I'm just saying it was surprising for us because they never mentioned the likes of Congressman Teves in the deliberations. They were always portraying these terrorists who the courts cannot catch and so on. So for me, that's really one example. And of course, the other example are the cases filed against nuns who were, very, very active in organizing the poor, indigenous people who are very active opposition during the election, and of course, as activists. These are the cases the mixture of cases where they filed the anti-terror law. So it doesn't give us comfort that the police and the government has charged many people with terrorism mainly because the definition of the terrorism could include any one of us here, because of the overbreadth and the vagueness of the law itself.
Okay. Attorney, puntahan po natin yung procedural rules, ano, because you spoke about two concerns. One is the overbroad definition of terrorism. The other one is the power of the Anti-Terrorism Council. But how about the procedures when it comes to surveillance? Kailangan na po ng Court of Appeals nod. At pagdating naman sa detention, arrests without judicial warrants, can't people can't be detained beyond a period in the revised penal code, which is 24 days in total, 14 by the ATC, 10 by the RTC. Your thoughts on both counts, surveillance and
First,
detention?
yeah, thank you. Well, first, yes, the revised penal code says a maximum of 3 days. To 12 hour, 18 hours, 36 hours. That's the maximum. While here, the procedure says up to 24 days. So it doesn't really hew with what the revised penal code says. Now, if you're charged in court under the revised penal code, the maximum is 36 hours. So that is not comforting to us. While they say, well, it should hew to the revised penal code, but at the same time, it does not prohibit a 24-day detention without charges. So our question is, why arrest us if you will not charge us in court? Oh, we're preparing the evidence. It's your problem. It's not my problem. I'm under detention, so you should prepare your evidence and file a case against me in court, right? The second is, well, there's this big thing about the Court of Appeals should have an order for wiretapping and surveillance. But that's the law already, Gretchen. The law here actually, since the Wiretapping Act says that no one can wiretap anybody without a court order. So what's new with the procedure being given by the court? Be- And in fact, there is a law already before that says that you need a court order to wiretap. But you remember the Hello Garci tapes and the military and the police, I believe, just wiretaps anybody. That's why I was saying, why do they really need this law? When you know what, come to think, if you really look at this, do they need the law to go against, the terrorists? I mean, in the Philippines, you're just a drug suspect and you die. So why this sudden obsession with the law? Do they really need this anti-terror law against the Abu Sayyaf? If they see an Abu Sayyaf there, they will say, "Oh, we cannot arrest him. We cannot raid his house because there's no loan." I don't think so. They just barge into houses without search warrants, without warrants of arrest. So why do they need this law against the so-called terrorists? No, they don't need this law against the so-called terrorists, but they would need this law against the opposition, against the activists. Because the war against the enemies of the government has been ruthlessly being waged for so many years now without need of a terror law. There are massacres and arrests and, of course, searches without warrants. So they're not really particular about the law as far as the terrorists are concerned, but they would need this law if they're going to arrest an opposition member or an activist, because we will surely defend our rights in court and we have the means to do so.
All right, thank you so much for helping us sift through that and for joining us
Thank you.
tonight. Human Rights Lawyer, Attorney Neri Colmenares.
Pausing for another break right after that. President Marcos orders the Anti-Money Laundering Council to strengthen efforts to remove the Philippines from the global money laundering gray list. The details when we return. Keep it here on One News. watching the big story here on One News.
The Anti-Money Laundering Council, or AMLAC, has stressed the need to expedite the removal of the Philippines from the global money laundering gray list in 2024. This comes after President Bongbong Marcos directed the AMLAC and all concerned government agencies to address the remaining strategic deficiencies that will remove the Philippines from that list. Global Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Watchdog Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, has placed the Philippines under the gray list in June of 2021. The Philippines originally received 18 action plan items to resolve its gray list status in 2021. Currently, it has 8 remaining action plans that need to be addressed. Let's quickly run down these 8, which were summed up into 5 action points. These are to enact effective risk-based supervision of non-financial businesses and professions such as lawyers, accountants, jewelry shops, casinos, and the like. Mitigating the risk associated with casino junkets, enhancing and streamlining of access to beneficial ownership and information, increasing money laundering and terrorism financing investigations and prosecutions, and demonstrating an increase in money laundering investigations and prosecutions in line with the risk of the Philippines. AMLC Secretariat Executive Director Attorney Matthew David warned that the FATF could impose countermeasures on the Philippines, as well as international financial transactions of Filipinos abroad, should the country be blacklisted.
Will be blacklisted. We are not yet blacklisted. We're still gray-listed right now. The FATF will impose countermeasures on the Philippines and international financial transactions of Filipinos abroad. That is, for example, as the remittances of the OFWs, there will be increase in cost, more requirements, stringent requirements, or sometimes de-risking, or sometimes the transactions may be denied or disapproved. We don't want that to happen, so all government agencies are aiming to address those deficiencies, 8 remaining action item plans, and eventually exit the gray list this year, 2024.
The Health Department confirms that 1 person has been killed due to firecrackers this year. The agency also continues to log new cases of fireworks-related injuries as well as incidents of stray bullets. We have JC Cosico for the details. JC, go ahead.
Gretch, apart from firecracker injuries, we're also getting reports of victims getting hit by stray bullets. One of them is 28-year-old Joan Jimenez from Antipolo, who got hit while watching fireworks on New Year's Eve.
Yung balikat ko is bumaba na siya eh. Gumanon na ako. Ay, aray ko, ang sakit, sabi ko. Tapos lumapit na po ako sa tito ko, pina-check ko po. Tapos nakita po nila na, natamaan ako ng bala, butas po yung sa may likod ko.
Police were able to recover the bullet slug and will be conducting ballistic tests to find out who is responsible for the indiscriminate firing. The PNP said they received reports of at least 12 incidents of stray bullet injuries. So far, they have yet to confirm if anyone has died. Unfortunately, authorities have logged 1 death from fireworks, a 38-year-old man from Ilocos region.
It's more of a vacant house yata, parang bahay, na ginamit na taguan ng fireworks. May naka-store doon na fireworks. Malapit sila doon sa imbakan na nangyari doon sa bahay na to. And nagsindi siya ng yosi at natamaan, nasindihan, aksidente, sumabog. Ang baril, ang alak at ang paputok ay hindi dapat naghahalo-halo. Dahil pag nangyari yan, kamatayan ang tiyak na mangyayari.
To date, there's been over 400 cases of firework injuries this year, half of which was recorded on New Year's Day until earlier this morning. This is the highest tally in 5 years, surpassing the previous high of 413 cases back in 2019.
Sabik ang mga tao na magdiwang kasi ilang bagong taon tayo hindi nakapagdiwang. So medyo talagang nagtodo sila ng pagdiwang ngayon sa iba-ibang paraan.
The DOH hopes there will be no more injuries in the coming days, especially since the use of firecrackers tends to go down right after the new year.
Ito yung mga pahabol paputok na. Kaya isa sa mga aming inuulit-ulit ngayon is kapag meron pang paputok na hindi natapos, hindi sumindi, hindi sumabog, huwag po munang pulutin. pakibasa po muna, gumamit ng tubig kasi baka yun pa yung maghabol ng kaso sa mga susunod na araw. As far as doctors are concerned, we would like the count of fireworks-related injuries to be 0.
Gretch, the DOH has logged victims of firecracker injuries as young as 1 year old. Now, apart from hearing loss, the agency also reported a case of blindness due to fireworks. Up until early this morning, we still saw some patients being rushed to the East Avenue Medical Center in Quezon City for treatment. Back to you.
Thank you very much. That was News 5's JC Cosico.
And it's been 2 days since the consolidation deadline for PUVs, and as early as now, commuters on their first day of work this 2024 are already feeling the impact. Some commuters in the metro found it difficult to catch a ride today due to the limited number of jeepneys plying some routes. A number of jeepney drivers who did not consolidate apparently were unaware that they are still allowed to operate until the end of the month. The LTFRB had earlier given non-consolidated drivers and operators the authorization to continue their operations until January 31st so as not to hamper the operation of public transportation routes without consolidated transport service entities. Based on data from the LTFRB, over 31,000 traditional jeepneys in Metro Manila have yet to be consolidated as part of the PUV modernization program. 66% of jeepneys were not consolidated in Calabarzon and 63% in Zamboanga Peninsula. The Office of Transport Cooperative says the LTFRB will release a resolution to determine whether PUVs that have consolidated are enough to service certain routes.
Definitely tututukan ng gobyerno ang lahat ng ruta to give that assurance na ang mga riding public natin ay meron silang masasakyan.
All right, before we go, we are running out of time. It is a new year, 2024, but questions still remain regarding the transfer of Embo Barangays to Taguig City. They are still very much around. Now, this time around, Embo residents are no longer qualified to receive healthcare subsidies from the city of Makati. Brian Basa reports.
2024 opens new questions for residents of Embo Barangays who were caught in the middle of the jurisdiction battle between Makati and Taguig. With the new year comes changes, particularly in the benefits these residents receive. Among those bracing for this is 68-year-old Celsa. She suffered a stroke last month and has since had trouble speaking. She lives in West Trembo and has been receiving benefits as a former Makatizen through the city's yellow and blue card program. These cards provide Celsa with up to 3 free dialysis sessions weekly. But beginning January 1st, Embo residents can no longer enjoy these benefits. This is in compliance with the Supreme Court decision transferring the jurisdiction of 10 Embo barangays and over 200,000 residents over to Taguig. Many are now concerned on whether they would be able to receive the same privileges from the Taguig city government.
Ang hinayang din po kasi yun na lang din yung ni mama eh. Kumbaga kapag wala nang problemahin gagastusin kapag pupunta sa ospital. Ngayon, puro gastos na ako tutuusin kapag ilalakad na ulit siya mga dialysis niya.
What exactly do Makati residents get from using the yellow card? Card holders can use it at the Hospital lang Makati and pay nothing if their hospital bill costs 5,000 pesos and below. If it's more than that, they would only need to shell out 500 pesos, even if their bill reaches 1,000,000 pesos. Yellow card holders also get access to free medicine, including maintenance meds for hypertension, diabetes, and other diseases. There's also the blue card, which provides cash incentives for senior citizens, ranging from 3,000 to 10,000 pesos, depending on the cardholder's age. They also get access to free movies, birthday cakes on their special day, and a supply of grocery items. Barangay officials are now waiting for further instructions from the Taguig local government on what would happen to the benefits.
We're still waiting sa coordination po ng City of Taguig kung ano po ang magiging designation ng mga bagong health centers since hindi nga po magagamit yung mga health centers na pagmamay-ari ng lungsod ng Makati.
The Taguig city government has yet to respond to these concerns. But for now, the city offers birthday cash incentives for its citizens. There's also a center for the elderly that offers dialysis services and other wellness facilities. For News 5, I'm Brian Basa, and we are One News.
Okay, abangan ang susunod na kabanata. Taguig. All right, that's it for the show tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Welcome back, Sean.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
And half of my voice.
Get well soon.
Thanks for tuning in to The Big Story. Have a good night.